NJ.com and the Star Ledger welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start chopping.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. We are here, Politti, Fonseca, Lanny, the whole crew. 22-0 loss in Iowa. I was thinking about it. It felt to me a little like a Chris Ash performance, and quite frankly, I thought we were done with those, especially against a team that, the non-Ohio State, Michigan level teams. I thought we had our final one of those games, but no, another Chris Ash kind of level performance. Inept on both offense and defense. You guys chronicled it well out there. I'm not sure what stunned me more. I guess you could expect the offense to be bad against Iowa's defense. I was surprised that the defense was bad against Iowa's offense, but we need to start with the quarterback. I think that's what everyone was talking about this morning and after the weekend. And here's my feeling on this, guys, and tell me if you agree. And I think we've been pretty, at least I've tried to not overreact to every single result from Gavin Wimsatt this year and not making a referendum on whether he's going to be the guy. Like I didn't want to do that coming out of every game saying he's not good enough. Oh, now he's good enough. That doesn't serve anybody well. But I'm just not seeing the improvement over last year. I'm not seeing what I think you needed to see to be confident that he's going to be the quarterback that's going to get Rutgers over to the next level. I guess that's where I'm at. And if you look at the season stats this year, guys, 48% last season, 44% last season. He's at 48% this season completion rate. 5 touchdowns last season. He's at 8 touchdowns this year. 7 interceptions last season. He's at 6 this. I mean, it's really just not that better. Am I wrong?
I think he has cleaned up. Well, I thought that he had cleaned up most of his issues from last year, but those stats kind of tell a different story. He's thrown an interception 4 of his last 5 games, at least one, that matches his worst stretch from last year. Yes, he's running the ball a bit better, but in games like Saturday where they can't run the ball at all, that doesn't help much. And the biggest thing to me is even if he has raised his floor to the point where he's not hurting them and losing them games, although you can argue that has happened against Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio State this year, he has not shown me at all that he can elevate Rutgers and win them games. Rutgers needed a quarterback they needed one score. They were down a score for almost the entire game. They needed a quarterback who can make a play, who can make a throw, do something. This is a kind of game, the razor thin margins, where one play changes everything. I don't think he came particularly close. I do think he was good in the first half. I thought that was one of his better halves of the year. Frankly, even the incompletions he had were kind of on his receivers more than him. I thought he was fine, but the second half, when they really needed a score and time was coming down, he didn't do it. And again, I haven't seen that all year. And that's what you want to see from a quarterback when you want to go from beating teams that you should, which Rutgers has, when you want to get that signature win, which Rutgers is now 0-4 and trying to get this year. You need a quarterback that can play above and beyond. I haven't seen any signs that Gavin Wimsatt could do that.
Pat?
Rutgers just wanted a quarterback that can move the chains on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, make an easy throw, and keep this offense ahead of schedule. And for most of the season, Gavin Wimsatt has done that, I would argue. And now it's just at the point where he had a really tough second half, and it's starting to become apparent that he's not going to win them games, as Brian said. But I think he still is the best option at this point. So I don't think there's a switch that needs to be made or anything like that. I just think when Rutgers couldn't run the ball, it became apparently obvious that their offense has no chance at succeeding. And that's a bigger issue to me. The offense is so one-dimensional. And does that fall back on the quarterback? Certainly a little bit. But at the same time, Rutgers has put all of its eggs in one basket, and that's in Monungai's hand. And that's a bigger issue to me too.
I think when you say there's no better option now, that's two things can be correct. There's no better option now, and he's still not the guy. And I feel like what I've gotten a lot, and it reminds me of covering the Giants at the end of Eli Manning's time, where it was always if he had better blocking. We'll look at the running game. Well, he doesn't have a good receiver. We're doing a lot of the same things that you do, making excuses for a quarterback. And I see that. Like, I get it. Like the receivers, your best receivers will walk on. Chris Long's out. You haven't had, Nassim Brantley couldn't get eligible. I like the weapons are better. There's no tight end who can catch the ball. I get it. The weapons aren't there, but at the same token, the offensive line's better than I thought it would be. The running game is pretty good, except that one, except against Iowa. Good all year. So he has a good running game. I guess I just wonder if the things I'm seeing, which is the accuracy issue, if that's ever going to be, if that's going to improve. At some point you have to look at, he's played 23 games. This might just be who he is, and I guess I'm kind of getting there. And I wonder what happens now. Like, all right, well, is this going to be this? Is Greg Schiano going to get there? Like, are you going to go into next season with hoping that the light bulb flicks on and jeopardize another year where this program could be really ready to take him an even bigger step than it did this year? And, still have a guy who's completing 50% of his passes. I mean, that's a huge dilemma.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the discussion we had last week about, is Gavin Wimsatt limiting this offense? And I think certainly that's going to be a discussion in the offseason. Is Gavin Wimsatt limiting this team, this offense, from taking that next step? He has to improve his accuracy, obviously, for that to happen. He doesn't have to complete 65% of his passes, but league average, college football average is not too much to ask for. To not be the least accurate quarterback in the sport is not too much to ask for. Now, I agree with Pat. I don't think I've already seen some clamoring for the backup quarterback chat. Evan Simon is not better than Gavin Wimsatt. I think we have enough sample size to know that. The question is going to be in the offseason, are they going to be able – well, one, will they even entertain the thought of finding another quarterback in the transfer portal? I'm not even sure that discussion will start. It's very, as we've had this discussion ad nauseum, it's very difficult to get a quarterback in the portal that is good without paying a lot of money, and I'm not sure Rutgers has that. They're already going to be spending a lot of money, a lot of their resources on keeping the good players they have already. I'm not sure they have enough bankroll to get a high-quality Power 5 quarterback.
Right.
And I don't think, as we discussed last week, that AJ Surace is going to be ready to take over this program as a true freshman. I think that's an almost impossible ask for this kid who's playing in public high schools in New Jersey. So what does that get to? A pretty unsatisfying conclusion that Rutgers might just be in quarterback purgatory until AJ Surace is ready, or until Gavin Wimsatt takes the next step, or until some, anonymous donor comes out of the sky and gives them a couple $1 million to spend on a quarterback, because those are the only real options. And until then, they're kind of in this point where I see a lot of people saying that Rutgers is playing conservative offensively, combined with what you said of the lack of weapons at wide receiver and tight end, and the quarterback's inaccuracy and inability to take this offense to the next level. This is pretty much the only way Rutgers can win games at this point. So as Kirk Ciarrocca is kind of hamstrung. Like, I understand the want for more jet sweeps, more screens, more creativity. You only really have what you can work with, right?
Yeah, I take a little issue with the Ciarrocca hamstring thing. And it was really on display there for me when you could see that Brian Ferentz had some wrinkles. This guy's the most maligned offensive coordinator in college football history, maybe not quite, but certainly history. Yes. And like, all right, and then you're going to come out in the empty backfield and you're going to run this cool play to a tight end lineup as a fullback. You're 50. I mean, you just saw some stuff. I totally agree.
I totally agree with you, Steve. Brian Ferentz out offense and out game planned Rutgers in that game. Like, as you said, the most maligned offensive coordinator and play caller, who had a points per game clause written into his contract, who had the sickos committee mountain climber game, who got fired because his dad would never fire him. Rutgers can't throw a screen pass. Rutgers can't run a jet sweep. They can't throw short passes because of inaccuracy issues.
Right. And they're afraid to throw over the middle too. That's the other part. They're afraid of that. Yeah,
100%. And to me, just the one more point I want to make on the quarterback is that I know for a fact that Ciarrocca is very steady, and Greg Schiano's kind of given him a long leash to develop Gavin and play the long game. It's always felt that way, that they want to make it work with Gavin as much as possible. It just feels like that development that you thought was going to happen, that he would make at least a little bit of a marginal step in his second full year, just hasn't happened. And that makes you question, all right, it's not maybe it's coaching, but it comes back to talent at the end of the day, and maybe that's an issue that just can't be coached.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like sometimes the play calling is a little suspect as well. So I think it's 50-50 who gets the blame here for the lack of development for Wimsatt.
Yeah. In fairness to Shiraka, this is the first time I was really like, what are we doing here? Like I've been okay for the most part with the play calling, acknowledging that this is going to be a conservative team that has to run the ball first, to play to his strength, all of that Gavin's limited, that they don't want to put him in positions to fail. They want to put him in the positions to succeed. I really haven't. I know a lot of fans have. I haven't had a huge problem until that game against Saturday, Brian. I don't know. I just didn't. I didn't seem like they were trying. That's the best way to put it. I get it. They were, but I'm really watching it. And I know Iowa's defense is great. I get it. But I don't know. It's like the first time I felt like, all right, what are we doing here? Like, are you trying to throw the ball down the field? We're going to throw something in there, wrinkle anything?
I do think it's important to note the opponent they're playing. The over-under was 27.5 for a reason. This is a team that played its last 3 games. The scores were 12-10, 15-6, 17-10. This was always going to be a low-scoring field position game, and I think Rutgers was playing that field position game where instead of taking that risk down the middle, throwing it deep, whatever, they're content to try to run the ball, try to make marginal gains, move the ball forward, punt it deep, force Iowa's horrible offense to punt it back, and you slowly but surely move down the field. Maybe Jay Patel gets a field goal. Maybe you get in the end zone, and you win the game that way. Look, if the defense was able to get stops, Rutgers did not get a single 3-and-out. Not one 3-and-out against
That's remarkable. Wow.
The worst offense in Power 5, the laughing stock. People in college football were laughing at how bad Iowa's offense is. Rutgers cannot get a single 3-and-out. They gave up more first downs in the first half to Iowa than Iowa had against Wisconsin, Iowa State, Minnesota, and Penn State. They had 4 first downs against Penn State. They had 11 in the first half against Rutgers. I know Rutgers only gave up 22 points. I know they only gave up 3 points in the first half. As Greg Schiano said, they were lucky to only be down 3 points in the first half. They had their kicker missed a field goal. They threw up an unbelievable, may I say, Gavin Wimsatt-esque interception at the goal line. And if it wasn't for that, they'd be up 2 scores at the half. And they weren't dominating Rutgers defense. I shouldn't say that, but they were moving the ball against Rutgers defense. Iowa. So my point is that had the defensive end held its side of the bargain there, and played as well as they could and held Iowa's offense, the field position battle game would have worked better. I think my point is that was clearly the strategy. They were being conservative intentionally and trying not to beat themselves against Iowa. I can understand that point of view, because if you throw 1 pick six, if you do any play like that and give Iowa 3 points, the game is over. Clearly, they scored 0 points. So I can understand that. I think that as Shiraka showed in the first 9 games, to your point, Steve, like you said, this is the first what the F game. I'd like to think that against Penn State and Maryland, they'll be a little less running the ball on 3rd and 7 than they were on Saturday. And the penalties, again, just to be clear, the penalties also did not help.
Pat, what happened with the defense?
They didn't get any pressure whatsoever. And they were blitzing a lot, which opened up, I think, a lot of like one-on-one matchups that Iowa hit on in the short passing game that I thought they just were a little vulnerable. I thought the cornerbacks didn't play. I know Max Melton had the interception. It was a tremendous play, but overall, like, they were giving up big plays to no-name players that had done nothing to that point, which was very worrisome. And just the lack of pressure overall, I thought was disappointing. Especially, it just keeps coming back to this. Like, we thought coming into this season that this was going to be a defense that absolutely got after the quarterback every single week and was going to be able to win games because of that disruptiveness. It just hasn't happened. And that's kind of a head scratcher. To diagnose a big picture, I think they got out game planned. Like Brian Ferentz called a great game, and they really couldn't stop the run in the second half either. So like those drives were just continued, and it all just kind of fell apart. It snowballed. Of course, it snowballed too when the offense couldn't move the ball. Right. So they were on the field forever too in the second half. So I
felt like the first time the defense kind of said, "All right, Uncle, You put us in too many bad situations here. And it's almost understandable, except for a couple injuries too. Robert Longerbeam going down, not good. All right, let's do true or false. Got a few good topics here that we've covered in the past that we're going to have to revisit. Here's the first one. True or false? Gavin Wimsatt will start the 2024 season opener. True or false, Pat?
True, because I still think they're playing the long game with him through all this. I really do.
Brian?
True. I just don't see any other realistic option. And you got to just kind of hope that Kirk Shiraka's quarterbacks usually take a second-year jump under his system. You got to hope that happens. I don't see them getting a transfer. I don't see AJ Surace being ready. I think this is just kind of what it's going to be.
Yeah, it certainly looks true. I should have asked, will he be starting the 5th game of the season? Would be an interesting question. Let's do that. Pat, true or false? Week 5 or 6?
My answer is not going to change because I wrote this.
Delete this.
I did a very well-researched history of Rutgers quarterback article to start the season. And it was all about, can Rutgers develop a quarterback for the future, and can it be Wimsatt? And just like based on that history, like it does take some time, and the growing pains are really hard. Like think about Gary Nova, right? Mike Teal. These guys were not that much better than Wimsatt through their sophomore season. And if you're going to pull the plug on this guy already, you're blowing an opportunity to develop a well-experienced veteran player down the line. And I think that's going to go a long way. So my answer is going to be true.
You still going true on that too, Brian?
Very optimistic outlook from Pat that he can become Gary Nova and Mike Teal. That would be great. I think Rutgers would sign up for that in blood. I'm not so sure yet.
But look at the history though. That's like if you go back, and they were not lighting it up as sophomores. They had a lot of issues. Gary Nova was benched.
They're about to say they also got benched. So let's keep that in mind. For Chase Dodd.
I agree with your general point. I don't think it's impossible. I do also think it's worth pointing out they had much better talent around them. Mike Teal had NFL players on his offense. Maybe Cobb Nunga's an NFL player. I don't see anybody else. Maybe Holland Pierce on that offense that's going to play in the league. To answer your question, Steve, yes, because their first 3 games are Howard, Akron, and Virginia Tech. And I think when they go to USC in late October, I still think Gavin Wimsatt's going to be the starting quarterback for Rutgers. I would be pretty surprised. I'm not sure what the alternative is.
I'm gonna go false, and I'm gonna say this only, and I don't know what's gonna happen. I just do not think Greg Schiano, based on what I saw in 1.0, is gonna just let this keep going like this. Like he has to recognize that this has not been good enough. And whereas they're not, I get like people think, well, why not give Evan Simon a chance? I think there will be someone in the program he will just by default give a shot next year. So we'll see.
Who? Evan Simon?
No, the freshman, the transfer, somebody that was good. Somebody's going to have, like anybody. Johnny Shepard, someone's going to have a chance next year. So it has to.
With the transfer, who are they going to get a transfer?
I just tell him he can't. He knows he can't keep doing. Well, no, he can't keep doing this.
So it's a panic move. Like it can't be worse. I understand that
you got to try something for this. Like at a certain point, I mean, if this continues. If this is Gavin Wimsatt to start next year, he will not be the quarterback in week 5 or 6.
Understood. And I don't think you're wrong. I'm just saying we fall into this fallacy of it can't get worse.
It can't get you. It can't get worse. Right? This is a guy he went to a walk-on. He went to Chase Dodd. And it's true. I don't think he's changed to the point where he's not gonna this is what we've got. This is the best option. He's gonna try something else. He's gonna have to try something else. His season depends on it.
Not apples to apples, but just to compare Gavin Wimsatt and Evan Simon against Iowa the last 2 years. Gavin Wimsatt did not win the game for Rutgers this Saturday. He did not lose it. Evan Simon lost them the game against. Well, I shouldn't say that's not. It wasn't all on him. Good, Pat. You were going to say something?
Yeah. No. Just move on. My opinion is not going to change. Like I still think long term they're still sticking with him. I really do.
All right, true or false? Book it. Rutgers will play in the Pinstripe Bowl. This is a foregone conclusion. Is it, Pat? True or false?
It is true. It is true.
Brian, we going to Bronx?
I felt that they probably needed to get to 8 wins to avoid the Bronx. I don't think they're beating Penn State. I'll say true.
All right, I'm going to say true as well. Is there a 6-win? We're not going to get the Bronx scenario here, though. We're going to be shuffled out to Detroit or something worse. No. You're grimacing. Pat is grimacing. I didn't like that. That's like Christmas flights.
We were talking to the Iowa guys at the game. We were talking to the Iowa game, and they, of course, prefaced it because they have a great fan base that travels. But Iowa played in the Music City Bowl at 7-5 last year.
So, I don't think 7-5 Rutgers is playing in the Music City Bowl.
Yeah, not this year. I mean, there's too many other teams to pick from, right? I mean,
yeah, and Rutgers. I mean, to be fair, there are probably worse Big Ten teams than Rutgers that could get that end of the, like if Northwestern or Maryland make the 6-6. Oh, Maryland did, or Nebraska. They're probably worse than Rutgers and can make it to the Quick Lane Bowl. But I just think when you're 6-6, 7-5, you're not a big enough name to travel out to Vegas or Phoenix, and proximity rules. So you can get more Rutgers fans at the Pinstripe Bowl than anywhere else. I think it just fits perfectly, and barring an upset of Penn State, that's where they're going to end up.
I'm with you on that one. All right, true or false? Injuries will keep this team from winning another game. Now we're looking at 6-6, Pat. True or false?
No, I still think they got a good shot against Maryland, but injuries are a big concern. Like they if Longer Beam's out long term and Jaquay Jackson's out long term, those are two huge losses for sure.
Brian, we seem to be losing players we can't lose at this point.
I think they might finish 6-6. I'm not sure injuries are going to be the reason. Maybe lack of depth, which I guess falls into the injury thing. No, Jaquay Jackson, I thought Ian Strong fit in fine to replace him. I thought he was their leading receiver. I thought he had a great catch on this great throw from Gavin for that 29-yard gain. And then I thought Eric Rogers was fine in Longer Beam's place. I think those guys are fine. It's just I'd be worried about losing Monungai. I'd be worried about losing Ahanatu long-term. Those guys worry me more, but I don't think that's going to be the reason. If they lose to Maryland, I don't think that'll be the reason.
All right. I agree with you. Absolutely. True or false? The Big Ten treated Jim Harbaugh unfairly. People are losing their SHIT over this in Ann Arbor. Pat, was this unfair?
I'm just gonna say, let me clarify. Sorry, I'm mumbling so badly because I am just unsure about the question. Like, he was treated unfairly because he only got 3 games. That's what you're asking?
No, because they don't think he should have gotten anything. I mean, you saw what was happening. The bet, the university president, the guy crying on TV, the tantrum coach crying on TV, like he was thrown into prison. Like he was.
I just want to pass this to you. Yeah,
to the FBI, like he had been in. Good grief! This is the worst thing that's ever happened to the University of Michigan. They're going to leave the Big Ten over it, Brian. I think you know how I feel about this. How do you feel about it? Was he treated unfairly?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
I'm
listening.
Let the investigation play out.
Oh,
Don't cower to the outrage of the athletic directors and the coaches who are just mad for the sake of being mad, because they're always mad about something. I'd like to see the whole thing play out. It's a half-measured punishment anyway. Like you're clearly just doing it to appease everyone else in the Big Ten. As mad as Tony Petitti is, I just let the season play out. I'll punish them after the season. I am on the side of the Wolverines. Ridiculous decision, in my opinion. Sets a terrible precedent, and they won anyway. So what kind of punishment is this?
Please teach this young buck, Steve. Please put him in his place.
Wow. I mean, Gus. Okay. No, I hear you. I hear there never once have, as Michigan said, we didn't do this thing that's against the rules. Like they are acknowledging that they broke these rules, right? Like
insofar as they don't outright deny it. They're not saying we did it. They're just not saying.
Is the question. Like,
there's no deniability.
The hardball, even though the guy's standing next to him on the sidelines.
Okay, that doesn't matter. There's clauses in this that the head coach is responsible for what happens in this program.
I understand. Michigan should be punished to some extent for this outrageous scheme. I'm not denying that
you just
what
think
they did is bad. Don't do it before their biggest game of the year yet. A day before on a federal holiday, so it was clearly so that you couldn't put it in court and challenge it with a temporary restraining order. Don't make it a circus. Don't wait until the guy's on the plane to State College.
I love it.
They very clearly intentionally did this in like outrageous fashion. Let the season play out. Don't hurt your best team in the league. Like none of it made sense to me at all. It was almost as though like they were trying to make it look like the biggest circus possible. Let them play out the season. Let the NCAA handle it like you've done with almost every other case in the history of the league.
Yeah, I think all right. Obviously, I disagree. I think they had to do something. Agree that it was sort of a weak punishment. I mean, coach, he's more important game during the week to motivate the team than he is on game day. They certainly didn't need him. They didn't look great. I watched a lot of games. They didn't look great in that game. They certainly handled Penn State, which has its own wide array of problems that I'm sure we'll talk about on Thursday when we preview the game. But I just the reaction to it, to me, the over the top, the hysteria in Ann Arbor, the leaking to Sports Illustrated and other outlets that maybe we should leave the Big Ten. You've been in the Big Ten since 2006. You're going to leave because finally a commissioner said, you know what? We're not putting up with your crap. You cheated before. You're cheating now. We've got a league. We get 13 other schools who are following the rules here against this thing. You egregiously did something that's outside the boundaries of what you're allowed. You're punished for it. You got to be punished for it. So I am pro Tony Petitti.
Who started leaking first? Who started leaking these things first? Was it not the coaches and the ADs 5 minutes after they finished their meeting with Tony Petitti, crying like little schoolgirls about, no one's punishing Michigan. Michigan ran the ball 32 straight times on Penn State, the second best defense in this league, and they could do nothing to stop them. No sign is going to stop Michigan from running the hell over every team they play. They're good. Michigan is good. They're not winning because of a sign, and they don't deserve to be punished now without due process just because everyone's crying about the fact that they're the best team in the Big Ten. Look, I don't want to sound like a Michigan homer, but it's outrageous what the rest of this league is doing and what the league is cowering to. Like, what are we doing? I thought we were college football coaches and players, not friggin' Karens in some school board meeting complaining about the dumbest thing.
Oh, wow. That was good. That was a good rant. I think
I'm too fired up about this. I want Michigan to win the national championship because of all this nonsense.
Whoa. How about that? Okay.
Did not see this coming.
See this coming. Me neither. I like it though. I like it. This is as fired up as since he was defending his crappy pumpkin a few weeks ago. I think I can't think of how fun. This is really a high level of this is some good Brian content. All right, let's move on before I don't want to. That's a good stopping point. Good job by you.
You guys got me in a bad day. Sporting blew a 1-goal lead in the last 2 minutes against Benfica.
This is
a huge game. I'm not going to go deep into it. I'm just saying. I'm in a very bad mood because of that. I'm going to be in a bad mood all week. So don't be bringing up controversial topics to me because I will pop off. I will stop.
Okay. All right.
Giants are an embarrassment. Jets are an embarrassment.
Pele's
the biggest embarrassment.
Pele is the best soccer player of all time. All right, moving on. True or false? The basketball team needs more from Cliff Omori. Going to sound like an unusual statement to make. I know you guys weren't at the game or probably weren't even able to watch the game on Sunday. What do you think? Does this team need more from its best player? Pat?
True.
Brian?
Vitor Gyökeres is the best soccer player of all time.
Oh, here we go.
I did watch the game on the plane. False. Rutgers needs more from their guards who are shooting 30% on threes so that when Cliff Omori is getting quadruple teamed in the paint, he could pass it out to somebody who can hit an open shot. The guy is not superhuman, although he did get an offensive rebound and dunk over 3 defenders. Unless you want him to do that literally every time he goes down the floor, somebody's got to make a shot to help the guy out. That's my argument.
Okay. I'm going to say true. The first half, and he was in foul trouble. I get it. But watching that game, it just looked like he was disinterested. And apparently Andre Hyatt, and this will be the next question, Andre Hyatt shook him up a little bit at halftime. Good leadership about that. He did play better in the second half. He was a rebounding machine, but he just has not looked like the guy I expected to see this year. The best player on the team, one of the 5 best players in the Big Ten. He just hasn't been that yet. He's been good, but I have a higher expectation for Cliff Omori than I do for anybody else in the team.
I agree with you. And especially against teams that don't have dominating opposing centers like Princeton and Boston U, right? Like and Bryant, you would expect one of the best big men in the country to dominate a 6'6" opposition.
Yeah, I think the light, you know what? And I think it's coming too. That's the thing about Cliff. I think it is coming.
He could beat a 6'6" guy, which he showed when he got one-on-one in the paint, did this great spin move to the dunk when he did get one-on-one coverage. FDU had nobody who could guard Zach Edey one-on-one, but they put 4 guys around him, dared Purdue to shoot. Nobody could knock down a shot, and that's how FDU beat Purdue. Bryant was putting 3 guys on Cliff Omori. Nobody could hit a three-pointer or a free throw for that matter. And I mean, I understand your guys' point. He should be playing better. He hasn't been playing great. I just think, the guy could get some help. It's not only his fault.
All right. Speaking of help, true or false? Ace Bailey is the biggest signing for Rutgers ever in the 150 years. Back when William Leggett put pen to paper, put quill to parchment in 1867. Pat, is that an exaggeration, or is this the biggest signing ever?
Oh, man. Across all sports?
Yeah, it's across everything.
False, because it's Anthony Ashnault.
Oh, boy. Okay. That's a good one, I guess. That's a good one.
The first undefeated.
That's a really good one, actually.
In the history of New Jersey, signing that guy. That's
a really good one. I appreciate that. All right. Brian, you got one?
That was an awesome call from Pat that completely changed my answer. I was going to say like a resounding yes, but when you have a kid that literally wins a national championship, great call from Pat. I'll go false. But I will say, in basketball, the only one that could compete realistically is Phil Sellers. Obviously, there was no recruiting rankings back then, and there was a little less buzz. But Phil Sellers was a big deal when he picked Rutgers. And obviously, his career played out to where he's the greatest player in program history. So I think in the moment of the signing, the biggest, I think it beats Phil Sellers. If Ace Bailey does live up to the hype in his 1 year at Rutgers, we're assuming he's going to be a one and done. I think he could surpass Phil Sellers. It went a little under the radar just because like he committed 9 months ago, never really wavered. Like there was never really any worry that he was going anywhere else. Pretty much shut down his recruitment. So the buzz isn't quite as high as you'd expect, but a humongous deal. Big props to Steve Peichel and Brandon Knight for getting this done.
I'm just trying to think of a counterpart in football, like the highest recruit, probably Anthony Davis, Savon Huggins didn't become the player that they thought he was going to become. The guys who changed the program in football. Brian Leonard was a big deal, but he wasn't this level of national big deal. This could be the top. This is a lottery pick coming to Rutgers. I mean, it's just insane. And I was kind of amazed, and I got some blowback on Twitter about it when I put it out there. I was a little, like, it just kind of flew under the radar. Like I was looking, I had to wake up and did that happen? Like, did he sign? I had to wake up and kind of search for it. It just didn't seem like it was treated with the same, holy bleep that. And I guess you're right, Brian. People knew it was coming. They weren't worried about him. He hasn't wavered. And he seems like, and this is compared to the other recruit who we'll talk about, it really does seem like he's just kind of chill. He doesn't need the drama, doesn't need the attention. He's happy doing it in his home gym on a Saturday night with his people around him. He's not looking for ESPN, not looking for the hat game, all the stuff that like will he or won't he? He just seems like he just wants to come here and play basketball. And wow, that's great.
He committed out of nowhere.
Yeah,
there was no build up. I'm committing at this time, on this date. Follow my live announcement on 247 and check out my tweet from Tipton Edits. Like it was out of nowhere. He was quiet pretty much the entire summer. He signed his national letter of intent on a Saturday night, 5 minutes before midnight. Like you don't do that if you want attention. He did it because he wanted to be around his friends and family. One of those friends that was there, coincidentally, was Mr. Dylan Harper, which if Dylan Harper doesn't end up at Rutgers after all of this, it would be the greatest. I know people have said that he trolled Indiana by wearing their candy striped pants and doing the Ron Harper celebration. If he doesn't commit to Rutgers, this would be the greatest troll job. Impractical jokers would be crying thinking of a joke like this. It would be like the biggest troll job of all time.
He's going to Rutgers. Pat, I don't know. I've never been. I don't know when it's going to happen. I guess the latest rumor, people ask us all the time. The latest rumor is sometime before that game here at the RAC. Is that in late December? Is that your sense now? Is that's what the rumor is? Before the end of the year, he'll commit.
I actually want to do some reporting on like all the people that got it wrong to this point.
Yeah.
I think that would be a fascinating.
Will you include this podcast as part of that?
Yeah.
In your reporting?
You got to be objective. I think that would be fascinating because it's just that. So I don't want to make any more claims because I don't want to end up in this report.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll let Brian be that guy.
Even Dylan Harper himself is committing false reporting when he said he's going to commit after Peach Jam, and it's been 4 months since Peach Jam, and he still hasn't committed. So no one really knows. I've heard something similar to you, Politi. I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up in June. Hey guys, I'm here, and that's just kind of what happens. So.
It was when I saw that he was in Georgia on a Saturday night, like there for Ace Bailey. That absolutely did it for me, though. 100%.
Is he going to come? So Ace Bailey's going to be here on Wednesday night, right? To get feted by the crowd, a nice moment, kind of big ovation. Will Dylan be here for that? I mean, it seems like he's in the neighborhood. They're buds. What are you hearing?
Zagoria did report when he spoke to Ace Bailey after his official visit that he would be at the Georgetown game November 15th. I would think that if he's here, Dylan Harper lives 40 minutes away. I'm assuming he's back in Jersey. I mean, he's obviously he still has to go to school, right? Despite all this drama and going to the NBA, he still has to go to school. I would imagine he'll be there. And to the point about him traveling to Georgia on Saturday, he was in Long Island on Friday night watching his brother play in the G League. So it's not like he was in Georgia in the area anyway. He went there on purpose to see this. Yeah. So again,
maybe he's got a jet at this point. Who knows? I mean, high school, this could be it. This could be like the high school, it's going to happen eventually. There's going to be some high school recruits going to be flying around the country in their own Lear business 6-seater.
Arch Manning probably could have had that, right?
Yeah. All right. So they want to talk basketball really quick. I mean, 2-1. We said they had to win the next 5 games. We've got the first 2. I thought they looked okay in the second half. Andre Hyatt, was the guy they needed him to be, hit some outside shots. Gavin Griffith, he's a freshman. He looked great, right? Against Boston. Did not missed some open shots, kind of looked a little out of sorts there against Bryant. Overall, I guess, kind of finding their way, this team.
Yeah, they did what they had to do in winning these 2 games this weekend. They didn't look great doing it against Bryant, but they did it, which is the most important thing. No one's going to look at how you played against Bryant in March. It's just whether you beat them or not. So it's good. I think Andre Hyatt is going to have to do this a couple times in non-conference and kind of, you expect freshmen like Gavin Griffiths and JaMychal Davis to be a bit up and down. The backcourt is going to have to figure something out. They need more from Derek Simpson. They need more from Noah Fernandez. And to your point, they're going to need more from Cliff, probably more from Antoine Woolfolk. And they desperately need Mawot Mag back because I think he can take them to the next level. So until that happens, which I would guess, this is my speculation, he won't be back until Illinois. I don't think there's any reason for him to rush himself back for Georgetown or whatever other tomato cans they're playing between now and then. So they have to just survive, beat Georgetown, who lost to Holy Cross this weekend, beat Georgetown, beat the rest of the tomato cans until you host Illinois. That stretch, Illinois, Wake Forest, Seton Hall, maybe ease Mawot Mag back into that. After that 3-game stretch, I think you really will know what this team is, where they are at, what they need to fix, what their strengths are, and have a fair projection of what kind of season to expect when you get back into Big Ten play in January.
All right, let's take a few questions from our loyal subscribers. Thanks, folks. NJ.com, Rutgers Insider, if you want to join the team. David Melman wants to know, where would we put Rutgers in the Big Ten pecking order? He says, we are now, I think, far improved from the total embarrassment of the Chris Esch era, even after Iowa. Would you put us in the bottom third, perhaps middle third, maybe bottom of the middle of the league, and why? Numerically, where do we currently stand? Good question. And I think I would say 6, 7, 8 range. And the problem is that Rutgers will have played 1 through 5. That's kind of where I'm at. That's the issue. They're played the best teams in the league. 6, 7, 8. You guys disagree?
No, I think that's pretty spot on. And it's just been such a weird year for the Big Ten too, with injuries and how the middle of the pack has really shuffled from a week-to-week basis. I was so high on Maryland for most of the season, and then they lost to Northwestern. They dropped. There was an argument for Rutgers coming out of its bye that it could have been the 4th best team in the league, right? We thought maybe they were ahead of Iowa. Obviously not. No. Wisconsin without Mordecai. What's happened in Wisconsin? Nebraska's so up and down. There's so much flexibility in the middle that it comes down to game planning and execution, to put it
Right.
simply.
I guess, Brian, the interesting part about this question is like which of those programs that are in that group with them, like Nebraska, you would put Nebraska currently behind Rutgers, but historically, certainly you would think that, and given who they have out there as a coach, that they're going to get that right. Like there's a couple teams that are in that area that you would expect to make moves in the positive direction.
I would think Wisconsin will weed out
Yeah.
the leftovers from the first year in Fickle. Some unbelievable quotes out of Madison this weekend about, Mordecai saying, testing how much this team cares, and their starting safety saying like the guys are soft and they're not prepared and they're not practicing hard. So clearly there's some extras to get rid of in Madison, and they'll take the next step under Fickle after they do that. I think Matt Rule will bring Nebraska. They look good this year in their first year. They have 5 wins, which I think a lot of people didn't expect. I think Maryland I think they'll fall after Tagovailoa graduates. But to answer your question about this season as a whole, I would say indisputably the top 3 are Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. Number 4 is Iowa. I think as much as we hate to watch Iowa and as much as they suck offensively,
they're
the
definitely
4th best team.
8-2, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. They win. That's all that matters. They win. And I think I would have said Wisconsin 2 weeks ago, but they look terrible now. I don't know. I think Rutgers is directly in that mix, and then you can argue however you want where they land.
Coming in, we thought Rutgers could be the best team in the West if they could beat Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Like that was what what we literally wrote.
Yeah.
And
we had you had to watch. You guys weren't subjected to it, but we had to waiting for the Rutgers Iowa game to begin. You catch the end of Indiana, Illinois. You're like, well, these two teams stink. We know that Indiana stinks. We saw that up close. Now Illinois is giving up 40 points against them. I mean, you're like, what? So there's a lot of bad teams. I mean, not a lot of bad teams, but look at Northwestern. Rutgers handled them. Now that guy might be the coach of the year. The way they've turned it up late in the season. I don't know. I think that's about right, guys. With the 6-7 range. All right, we got a lot of questions on Gavin Wimsatt. Of course, I'm going to try to just, since we talked about him a lot, Tony from Lawrence kind of encapsulated the one that I got the most. Why doesn't Gavin pull the handoff and run more? It seems like his runs are mostly of the design quarterback off tackle variety. I was screaming at the TV about that. Do you guys have a sense why he didn't run more?
Not screaming loud enough, clearly, because they didn't hear him in Iowa City. I don't know. Do they not trust him to make those reads? I don't see another reason why they wouldn't let him do it, right? I mean, he's shown the ability to run the ball when it's a design run. Yeah. Maybe they only trust the efficiency of that play when they can design it and they have Monungai leading as a lead blocker versus kind of hoping he reads it right. So that's my only real guess.
Yeah, I think it comes down to reading the defense a lot, and the way that Iowa had 8 guys in the box too probably took away some of that. But on that play, you're reading what the defensive end does, whether you want to hand it off or keep it. And I think that Iowa's very sound in their gap discipline and things like that. So it put a lot of pressure on Gavin to make the right decision, and he didn't really necessarily even make the decision because he handed it off every single time.
Right. All right, a couple other fun ones. John from Edison points out that I know it's early for this, but $30 to park at the rack for a basketball game, that is embarrassing. I heard a lot of issues about traffic getting out of that game. We will monitor this situation, guys, in the next few weeks and let you know what we're finding. And here's a good one for the pod. Favorite road football venue, which is not necessarily the same for hoops. So it's kind of interesting. Like what's a good road venue for one that's bad for the other? I mean, obviously, I have not, unfortunately, seen the basketball game in Indiana, but I can only assume it's better for basketball than it would be for football because it stinks for football. But what do you guys think? You've been now around the league a little bit.
We haven't traveled to many basketball arenas, to be fair. I went to Assembly Hall, but I've never been to Memorial Stadium in Bloomington, so we're on the opposite sides of the same coin. Penn State working facilities at Bryce Jordan Center and at Beaver Stadium stink equally, so I have no real comparison there. But I will say, I thought I think Pat agrees with me here. I thought Kinnick Stadium was awesome, if not the best, one of the best working situations for us since in our tour around the Big Ten.
I completely agree. I thought Iowa with the fans, the wave, which I was a puddle of mush just looking at the Children's Hospital the whole time, very emotional. I thought the whole thing at Iowa was very impressive. The facility was great. The access, like we were down on the field pregame, which was cool, and became important. Like, was Kyle Monungai going to play or not? And all those other guys that were questionable. I thought Iowa was A+. Madison is still my favorite. Is still my favorite trip to date. Like the college atmosphere of Madison, Wisconsin, the way it's kind of built into the city is very cool. And Camp Randall was a great venue. And Ann Arbor was very cool too. I did the fan experience in Ann Arbor, following around a couple of Rutgers fans. I thought that was a pretty cool one. But I thought Iowa overall was a great college destination. So I would put that on the list.
Yeah, I haven't seen a basketball game there, but I have to imagine it's obviously they've been very good at basketball. It would be a fun place. Football wise, Nebraska has been great. I mean, I don't know. I doubt it's good basketball, but football, that was a great trip. And I can't wait. We're going to see Pauley Pavilion eventually. Going to see the LA Coliseum. Then we'll expand this list.
Hopefully our trips to California are a little less interesting than our trips to Iowa, because within just before getting to Iowa City, there was a lot happening. We get to LaGuardia Airport, and
that's. Let me just stop you right there. This is the first mistake. We get to LaGuardia Airport. You've already lost. The game is over.
This one's on me. I made us fly out of LaGuardia. I'm a North Jersey. Brian's a North Jersey guy. We're all North Jersey guys, right? Like, so to me, like going to LaGuardia doesn't seem that bad, but it was brutal.
Yeah,
brutal.
Spoiler alert.
Airport's great though. Airport's great.
Once you get in the airport, awesome. Getting into the airport is a bit of a hassle. Yes. Then we fly to Charlotte, and we get off the plane, and we go to the bathroom, and a very strange situation where there's a man, like sometimes you go to a restaurant and there's a guy that hands out tawels and gets tips. I'm not sure exactly what that guy's job is. And there was a guy like that at the bathroom of the airport in Charlotte, but he would kept pointing out that the white dispenser, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he'd be like, the white box over there by the sink, it has soap in it. And he kept saying that over and over and over to everyone who walked in and out. And he would say, hello, sir, and goodbye, sir, to everyone who walked in and out. I wasn't sure if I should.
All-time bathroom attendant.
Are you sure he was an attendant and not just a deranged traveler? Could you rule that out? That's possible.
Because I think he was actually like a janitor who had he had a dustpan and was probably cleaning the bathroom at the time that he was telling everyone where the soap was.
I hate the Charlotte airport. And this is going to seem weird. A weird reason. And it is a weird reason, but I get infuriated by the rocking chairs everywhere. Like you're walking from one gate to another, and there are all these rocking. I don't know why that bothers me, but I see them and I'm like, this is not a place. What is this? A front porch on a nice spring day? You don't have a rocking chair in the airport. Every time I just irrationally get angry about that.
Here's a great question about the Charlotte airport for you, Steve. Mm-hmm. Obviously, first in flight. North Carolina, right?
First in flight, last to right. Yep.
Sure. You're a North Carolina graduate. Brian and I were having this debate because the Wright brothers are apparently from Ohio. And Brian had this fact off the top of his head. So who actually deserves the first in flight motto? Is it North Carolina or Ohio because they're from Ohio?
That's a great question. Yeah. North Carolina sort of stole that because it happened on the beach down there in Nags Head. Yeah. There's a museum where the first flight was, which is something you bring your kids to when it's raining at the Outer Banks. Yeah, that's a good question. It is. You would think. I think you make a good point, Brian. If you want to, Ohio, is that what you said, where they're from? The Wright brothers? You can steal it. Yeah.
I mean, Ohio was the birthplace of the people that invented flying. Well, not invented flying because birds have been flying before that, but invented airplanes. Yeah. But the first flight was in North Carolina. So I think you can argue either side. I don't think there's a right answer.
The debates that go on behind the scenes of the Rutgers Rant podcast. This is fascinating stuff.
So we're taking an Uber back to our hotel in Cedar Rapids when we finally get there. And we ask our taxi driver, hey, we were in Wisconsin, we had brats, we had cheese curds. What's the local delicacy here in Iowa? Pat, what did he start rattling off the top of his head?
First of all, we were in an industrial park, the industrial park section of Cedar Rapids, which you could only imagine is right on a major interstate that runs through the country. There were only truckers and strip clubs and fast food joints. So the three recommendations he had
were delightful.
Perkins, Taco Bell and Wendy's.
Oh,
With
that's
a straight
great.
face, told us those were 3 places we should try.
That's great. That sounds
Oh,
good.
and Casey's gas station pizza, which is one of the
You
best
should have done that.
pizza that he ever had.
I would have loved to have gotten the review of that'd have been a great look. It's like a good NJ.com post. I had gas station pizza in Iowa. It will surprise you. That'd been good. It'd been good.
That's true. We
Next time.
were not in our game apparently,
Next
but it
time,
was like
yeah.
1 a.m.
Yeah. All right. Good stories from Iowa. What else? Field hockey out with a whimper. Women's soccer out with a whimper. No NCAA tournament wins this fall, I guess, is what we're looking at. So,
Yep. Disappointing for field hockey to start the season off 15-0, their greatest ever start. We're talking about Big Ten regular season titles, Big Ten tournament titles, NCAA tournament titles, and they lose 4 of their last 5 games, lose a heartbreaker to win the regular season, losing the second round of the Big Ten tournament, losing the first round of the Big Ten tournament against Harvard, against the sworn enemy of the Lanny household. Tough way to go out.
And Columbia took down women's soccer. I've been told both these programs are going to be better next year. So if you're looking at that, there's hope here. But yeah, first round loss for women's soccer as well.
Yep. They blew a 1-0 lead too in the last 20 minutes. Looked like Sporting for a little bit, but we don't have to go into that.
Oh boy. All right. I want to end with this. I've got, I have a request from my friend Keith Norton, who does our intro. Wonderful intro. So he had the loyalist listeners will note that Nortz, former Rutgers lacrosse player, great friend of the pod, changed his introduction because of a friend pointed out, a buddy pointed out that it sounded like he was saying, let's start shopping instead of let's start chopping. And it was bothering him so much. And I'm like, Nortz, I don't know what you're talking about. That's ridiculous. But he's a perfectionist. He wanted to change it. So this is from a loyal listener, Lucky Mayer, age 10, Lucky Meyer, I think, Mayer. Should have asked him how to pronounce it. He'll make me re-record this after that. Listens to the pod every episode, lives in Colorado. Favorite player is Wimsatt. He wants credit for pointing out that error. And I just like it. You know, I asked Lucky if it sounded better, and he said yes. And Lucky also wants to point out that I mispronounced Silicon Valley in my ad for the the Helix, but we're not going to record because I am not the level of perfectionist that our MC Keith Norton is. So thanks, Lucky. Good job by you. Solid job. All right. On that note, let's end this show. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back later in the week to pick the Rutgers Penn State game. See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.